Yeah, I love that movie. So in 2015, my daughter Sydney was diagnosed in utero with a congenital heart defect called tetralogy of Fallot, and what that meant was that she was going to have open heart surgery. And so we joined a support group there because it is a it is a very emotional experience to have when you get told that your kid's going to have surgery within the first couple of days of life. And to make it worse, they're expecting open heart surgery. So we went through the pregnancy. And we, being mainly my wife, let's be honest, right? She did 99.999% of the work. So, but we went through the pregnancy, and after my wife gave birth to Sydney in June of 2015, the cardiologist made did another echocardiogram, right? And on that echocardiogram, he called us later that night and told us the VSD sealed up. And the VSD is one of the defects. There's 4 defects in her diagnosis. And the ventricular defect, which is the VSD, basically in the last 2 weeks, it's sealed up. So we still went to obviously to Children's. She still got heart surgery via catheterization, about 3 days old. But to have the cardiologist call us right after that first echo, after birth, and tell us that she was not going to need open heart right away was just amazing. I mean, just oh my gosh, what a blessing, right? So we went to Children's. We had her surgery. She did great. She's out kicking and doing everything else. She was on oxygen for the first 10 months of her life, but an amazing fighter. So as she got older and grew older, we realized that there was a community that came together when we needed them. And so we wanted to create something in order to basically encompass that love that we experienced when we found out Sydney was going to have to go through this. And the whole company is based on that. But as we progressed, we didn't really know what we wanted to do. Right, we kept going back to cardiology and so on for her checkups, and we knew that eventually we wanted to create something, but we wanted it to mean something. And one day she will have to have open heart surgery, but the fact that it was not within a couple of months of life, like a lot of our friends, was just, I mean, it was a blessing. There are so many of our friends out there who, right, so as we all know, February is Heart Month. So like the Children's Heart Foundation is one of our partners that we donate to considerably. But there's an awareness there that we're trying to create. And there's so many people out there that really need more assistance because of the lack of awareness.
And I love your story. And, I love, for some reason, your coffee tastes better because you have a better story.
Oh, good.
For some reason, that makes any sense. But it's kind of like and for guys that are listening to this, yes, Kyle is one of our sponsors, but he's also a friend. And any of my sponsors that are involved in the show, they all have a mission, and I love to help people with their missions. So now, I ask this, usually the last question I ask everybody, but since we're just BSing, because everybody that I've talked to recently or seen in our groups, they all get out of the military. They all want to start a hat company, a T-shirt company, a coffee company, or a liquor company. And 6 months later, they're $10,000 in debt and don't know what the hell just happened. So what was your experience like when you first started selling your coffee? Because a lot of people think, okay, I have an LLC. Now all of a sudden the floodgates are going to open up and all this money is going to come to me. And they don't realize the work you got to put in. So tell us about those first couple of weeks of you starting your company, some of the things that you had to do to get the company off of the ground.
Yeah, so incorporation obviously is one of them. You always want that protection for your personal assets and so on. But for me, the biggest thing was the awareness of why we were doing it, right? And being okay with not making a ton of money up front because that's not what it was about. So when you have a purpose, right, just like your podcast says, right, having a purpose to do something, everything else will flow. And when you learn to be okay and be okay with the fact that it's going to take some time, right? You don't need to drop $100,000 in the first couple of days or the first month in order to get things up and going. But what you do need to probably understand, or what I needed to understand, is right, it's gonna take some time. It's a building process, and as long as you are true to your mission, right, of why you even started this, right, whether it be helping out or otherwise, as long as you're true to that and understand a growth strategy, then you'll be okay. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have some friends that have gotten out and started companies and, did a business loan, and then they're, hundreds, thousands of dollars in debt. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And, I think they wanted to maybe grow too fast, because there is an art to growing, right? If you grow too slow, it's not very good. But if you grow too fast, it's also not very good, because you collapse on yourself. But understanding how much to grow and being okay with that growth, I think, is key.
Okay, now since we're going to talk about business a little bit, because this is most of the people that listen to this either are veterans or entrepreneurs or both veterpreneurs, and I find that a lot of people, where they make a mistake is, now I think, in my opinion, my wife is a lot smarter and has much better intuition than I do, to where if she feels something is off 99.9% of the time, she's right. And I think a lot of people, when they first start a business, they don't have that hard conversation sitting across from their significant other at the coffee table, and don't get them involved in the business. And then when the stuff hits the fan, then they have that hard conversation. So tell us about that conversation when you decided to finally start a coffee company with your wife.
Yeah. So one, I also married somebody way smarter than I am. Don't ever tell her I said that, but
Don't worry about it. Nobody's going to hear this anyway.
Perfect.
Nobody heard this conversation.
So I run stuff by her all the time. So one thing about my wife and I is we really have no issue bringing things up in front of each other, right? Because I understand, that 90, 95, 96% of the time, I'm probably not correct. But who is always correct? Not necessarily my wife, but the combination between the wife and I, right? The best decisions can be made as a group, right? Two minds are better than one. And in fact, my wife taught me this years ago when I first met her, which is, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong, but it's not okay to do nothing. So, right, and what I mean by that is, so when we had our conversation, and we still have conversations all the time about little tiny adjustments that we're making in the company. And when we have those conversations, though, I've learned that it's okay if her idea fits better than mine, then why would I try to shove my idea into...
Hopefully he's going to hop back on. He probably got another phone call. This happens sometimes with this app. So we're talking about his company, Heart to Heart Coffee. It's one of my favorite coffee companies. I drink it almost every day. I actually make a